Silence is not absence. Silence is presence in disguise. What appears empty is full of laws, forces, and intelligence you do not yet feel because you are listening with the wrong instrument. The common assumption is simple. Empty means lacking, vacant, void. You think of an empty room and you see nothing. You think of quiet and interpret it as nothingness. You think of stillness and mistake it for dormancy. This is a mistake the senses make. They measure reality by movement, by noise, by surface evidence. But the universe answers to a different meter, one that reads subtlety, field, resonance, and whisper. What the eye calls empty, the field recognizes as fertile. There is a silent power moving beneath what you call emptiness. It is the infrastructure of manifestation, the field out of which form arises. It is the womb of possibility that holds timelines, patterns, probabilities, and the grammar of becoming. This is why nothing is ever merely empty. Nothing is full of design, potential, order, and agency. Empty space in the cosmos is not nothing. Modern physics once used that word casually until instruments showed that the vacuum hums with energy, particles pop in and out, fields persist. Silence, at the deepest level, is dynamic. It is an orchestra of potential awaiting attention. And your attention is the conductor. So the first correction is simple and profound. Replace the word empty with pregnant. Replace void with field. What looks like absence is a charged presence waiting for your observation, your intention, your alignment to collapse it into the form you will experience. This truth changes how you live. It changes how you relate to silence, to empty rooms, to the gaps between events. It changes how you treat the pauses in your own life. The quiet week, the slow season, the unanswered message. These pauses are not dead zones. They are active laboratories. You must learn to inhabit the silence differently. When you move through the world with panic about the gaps, filling them with noise, distraction, busy work, you broadcast to the field that you fear lack. That signal organizes reality to confirm lack. When you instead attend to silence with presence, gratitude, clarity, and a clear intention, you broadcast a different frequency. That frequency aligns the field to what you truly are calling into being. There are practical distinctions to notice. Empty attention is the mind that complains. There is nothing here. Full attention is the heart that recognizes. There is everything here I have not yet learned to read. The difference is not subtle energetically. One collapses probabilities into scarcity, the other expands possibilities into abundance. This is why spiritual traditions insist on practices that taste the field. Silence, meditation, breath, slow rituals. These practices are not aesthetic. They are technical. They recalibrate the nervous system so that you do not mistake presence for absence any longer. You learn, in the quiet, to sense the architecture beneath sensation. When you enter silence properly, several things happen. Your mind slows. Your heart rhythm steadies. Your breathing deepens. The habitual clutching loosens. And the field begins to register a coherent signal instead of random noise. Coherence is the language of the field. The universe responds to a unified signal when your breath, feeling, thought, and intention move in the same direction. Empty, fragmented attention sends mixed messages. It says, want and fear, call and doubt, attract and sabotage. The field cannot read such conflict cleanly. It responds to what appears most consistent. Silence allows you to become consistent. It lets you refine the signal until it is precise. That precision is how manifestations arrive without extravagance, not by volume, but by clarity. You will notice an immediate practical shift when you treat silence as substance. Instead of fearing the gap between episodes, you begin to harvest it. You listen, you tune, you allow inner rearrangement. Instead of attempting to fill emptiness with frenetic doing, you spend that space calibrating the state from which you act. Calibrated action is powerful. Noise-driven action is scattered. The universe cooperates with the former and yawns at the latter. There is also a structural lesson here about limits and container. What you call empty acts as container for form. If the container is unavailable, clogged by chatter, obsession, or relentless planning, form cannot be received. You cannot pour water into a fist that will not open. The field sends gifts to open hands. This is why presence practices are not optional for those who wish to manifest reliably. They are the infrastructure work. They prepare the container. They tune the instrument. They teach your biology to feel the field. The second recognition follows. Silence is not a passive state for waiting, but an active site of transformation. To be silent is not to withdraw. It is to concentrate. It is to make internal adjustments that will influence external arrangements. You have a history of treating silence as punishment or boredom. You measure your worth by noise. You think productivity is equal to presence. This is backward. There is skill in stepping into stillness and knowing how to occupy it productively. Skill means breathing with intent. Skill means aligning feeling with thought. Skill means setting a clear inner frame and then allowing the field to perform its invisible choreography. Yes, there are times to act, but there are better results when action issues from silence rather than panic. Act from the field-aligned place and your efforts reshape circumstances with minimal friction. Now consider the idea of resonance. Everything resonates. Your body resonates. Your environment resonates. Your relationships resonate. Silence is where resonance clarifies because the loudness of distraction no longer obscures harmonics. To practice this is simple and exacting. You reduce noise, you breathe, you feel the center, you hold a high but calm frequency. You do not need to invent outcomes. You need to maintain the inner climate in which outcomes naturally emerge. At a functional level, this looks like 3 motions. Tend, stop cluttering the present with anxious projections. Notice what is here. Feel it fully. Align. Bring breath, posture, feeling into coherence with the intention you hold. No contradictions. Allow, release the insistence on the how and lean into the intelligence of the field to orchestrate details. When you repeat this motion enough, silence ceases to be empty and becomes your laboratory. You learn to harvest the subtle currents. You begin to notice the small alignments that preface larger shifts. You stop confusing noise for signal. There is a further correction here to address: the difference between being alone and being empty. Solitude is not a lack. It is an aperture. Being alone with the field allows the field to speak. Crowds and noise collapse your sensitivity. This is practical. If you want to hear the tuning of your own life, you must sometimes step away from external chatter. That said, solitude is not withdrawal from life. It is preparation to return more capable. The field always intends for you to re-engage. Silence is not exile, it is rehearsal. You also need to understand that the nothing you meet is not nihilistic. It is not meaninglessness. It is a fullness of potential, subtle, ordered, intelligent. The field is not chaotic. It is coherent. It is subject to laws you can learn to sense and speak to. You may feel skeptical. You may think of metaphors as elegant but not operative. This skepticism is natural, and it is part of the work the field requests you to do. Skepticism invites experiment. Try the practice, measure your inner climate, observe outcomes. The field does not require faith in doctrine. It requires precise attention and consistent state. Empty space will begin to answer when you stop treating it as dead. It answers to your quality of attention. The more consistent, the more capacious, the more clear your inner signal, the quicker and cleaner the field's response. There are small signs to notice as confirmation. You will notice synchronicities that used to be rare become regular. Paths that seemed blocked will open with subtle ease. You will sense confirmations internally before external evidence surfaces. This internal confirmation is the first evidence of field alignment. Trust it more than outside noise. Another practical element: words matter, but less than tone. You can affirm something loudly, but if your body vibrates contradiction, the field will obey the body. Pressureless language, calm, present, declarative from inner knowing, moves the field better than frantic shouting of desire. This is also why practices that regulate physiology accelerate alignment. Breath work, heart coherence, still meditation, these are not optional. They are the keys to translate your intention into a field coherent signal. Understand this: emptiness redefined is opportunity. Where there is apparent lack, there is space to receive the unexpected. Where noise once lived, now there is room for deliberate ordering. Where frantic trying used to scramble probability, now you can place a clear request and let the field respond. You will want to test this practically. Allow a silent moment, breathe 3 long breaths, form a clear inner image of what you want without clinging to details, hold an embodied feeling of already having it, then release the how. Watch what unfolds. Record small confirmations. Repeat. The field replies in kind. Finally, accept that silence trains patience. It stretches you into a tolerance for the unseen. It grows your capacity to hold potential without immediate evidence. And from that capacity comes a freedom that action alone cannot grant. Nothing is empty. Everything is alive, responsive, ordered, and waiting. When you learn to listen with the right instrument, the harmonized body, breath, and heart, you discover that silence is not passive at all but the most active field of all. You have been taught to fear the void. You were trained to fill it quickly, to silence the silence, to avoid the space between thoughts. Because emptiness, to the untrained mind, feels like loss. It feels like nothingness, and nothingness feels like death. But this is conditioning, not truth. The field is not death. The field is birth. Silence is not absence. Silence is preparation. What you resist as emptiness is the very channel through which new realities arrive. Every cycle proves this. The inhale is impossible without the gap of the exhale. The beating of your heart depends on micropauses between contractions. Music without rest is noise. Speech without silence is incoherence. Creation requires intervals. So why do you rush to erase them in your own life? Why do you run from pauses as if they were punishments instead of invitations? The truth is simple. You misinterpret them. You mistake waiting for wasting. You confuse stillness with stagnation. But what looks like nothing is always doing its work beneath visibility. Think of a seed. Buried, hidden, silent. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But beneath the soil, a revolution is taking place. Silence is the ground of transformation. It holds the codes of becoming before they are visible to your senses. This same law applies to you. The moments in your life that feel quiet, unproductive, or suspended are not mistakes. They are germinations. The field has pulled you into alignment, stripped away surface activity, and placed you in silence so deeper reordering can occur. It feels uncomfortable because your conditioning demands proof. Your nervous system asks for noise as evidence. But the field asks for patience. And patience is the bridge between potential and form. Nothing is really empty. Every pause hums with architecture. Every silence is pregnant with the blueprint of what will emerge next. You simply do not hear it because you are tuned only to the volume of the surface world. Here lies the discipline. You must learn to recalibrate your senses to feel subtlety. This means honoring the stillness, not trying to escape it. It means allowing the gap without rushing to fill it with distraction, entertainment, or compulsive effort. It means listening with more than ears, seeing with more than eyes. Silence trains you to hear the whispers beneath the noise. Stillness trains you to see the shapes forming before they harden. The field is always ahead of the senses. If you can endure its quiet without panic, you begin to receive its instruction. This is why practices like meditation, contemplation, and breathwork matter. Not because they are mystical performances, but because they are functional retunings. They strip away the addiction to loudness. They teach your body that silence is safe. And when silence feels safe, the nervous system stops panicking and starts perceiving. This shift changes everything. When you no longer interpret silence as threat, you discover its fullness. What once felt like absence begins to feel like saturation. What once felt like dead space begins to feel like living presence. It is not your life that was ever empty. It was your interpretation. And when interpretation changes, experience follows. Look carefully. The gap in conversation where words fall away is not awkwardness. It is intimacy. The quiet before dawn is not vacancy. It is readiness. The stillness of meditation is not wasted time. It is calibration. You do not need to make silence productive. It already is. Your task is simply to meet it with awareness, not avoidance. Now understand this deeper. The field does not need your frantic doing. It needs your coherent being. Silence is where coherence forms, where the scattered fragments of thought and emotion align into a unified signal. That signal is what reality responds to. Most people send out static, wanting and doubting, hoping and fearing, praying and complaining. The field hears confusion and returns confusion. But when silence is entered properly, contradiction dissolves. The signal clarifies. The frequency steadies. And the field organizes around that clarity. This is why silence feels powerful once you learn to sit with it. It is not passive. It is the amplifier of your intention. It is the clearing of inner static so the field can finally hear you. Nothing is empty. Not the pause. Not the gap. Not the stillness. Every space you call void is a container waiting to be filled. And it fills according to your state, not your words. So ask yourself, what state do you occupy in silence? Do you collapse into fear, assuming nothing is happening? Or do you expand into trust, knowing everything is happening where you cannot yet see? This is the difference between emptiness and fullness. Not in reality, but in interpretation. The field is full either way. But your perception determines whether you cooperate with it or fight against it. If you resist silence, you block your own becoming. If you embrace silence, you accelerate it. Therefore, the work is not to escape emptiness, but to reframe it. Not to fear silence, but to practice inhabiting it. Not to rush the pause, but to stretch into it with presence. Because silence is not an interruption. It is the secret engine of creation. What you call nothing is simply energy unmeasured. What you call empty is simply form not yet observed. The universe has never known vacancy. It is dense with activity, even in its stillest corners. And what you name silence is merely sound beyond the range of your hearing. Science confirms this. The vacuum of space, which looks like an endless black void, is alive with quantum fluctuations. Particles appear and vanish. Fields ripple without cause. A dance continues, even when no eye is watching. And yet, you still fear emptiness in your own life. You look at your quiet seasons and call them barren. You look at your unanswered prayers and call them neglect. But your perception deceives you. The field is still moving. It has never stopped. What appears silent is simply orchestrating on a frequency your senses cannot yet decode. The human mind hates this. It wants visible confirmation. It wants proof now, evidence now, results now. But the universe moves in patterns that are older than your impatience. It does not bend to demand. It bends to resonance. So the question is not, why is nothing happening? The question is, what is happening that I have not yet learned to recognize? Think of the night sky. You see stars, but do you realize most of them are already gone? Their light is delayed. It took thousands, even millions of years to arrive in your eyes. You are perceiving the past, not the present, and yet you call it now. Your life works the same way. By the time results appear in visible form, the field has already done its work. The silence you resist today is the starlight you will celebrate tomorrow. But to receive it, you must trust the unseen. This is the essence of alignment. Not clinging to what your eyes report, but aligning with what the deeper intelligence is arranging. The silence you fear is not lifeless. It is the incubation chamber of your becoming. Like the womb, like the soil, like the cosmos itself. The womb looks dark, but it is full of design. The soil looks empty, but it is full of nutrients. Space looks vacant, but it is full of potential. Every apparent void is simply a dimension of gestation. So, instead of asking, why is nothing here? Begin asking, what is forming here, invisible to me now? The field rewards the shift, because when you change your question, you change your vibration. When you no longer accuse the silence of failure, you begin to cooperate with its rhythm. And cooperation accelerates manifestation. Remember, nothing is neutral. Every state you hold is communication. Impatience tells the field, I do not trust. Doubt tells the field, I do not believe. Fear tells the field, I do not feel safe. And the field, precise and unflinching, organizes according to that signal. But when you enter silence with trust, when you allow emptiness without panic, when you rest in stillness without labeling it stagnation, your signal clarifies. You transmit, I am ready, and the field responds with coherence. It may not be instant. It may not look like what your ego imagined, but it will be precise. It will be exact, because the field never mishears. This is the real power of silence. It trains you to transmit clarity. It strips away the noise of desperation. It dissolves the static of fear, until what remains is simple, clean alignment. Understand this. The universe is not withholding. It is calibrating. It is not punishing you with delay. It is preparing you with timing. The oak tree does not appear in a week. The tide does not rise on demand. The moon does not skip its cycle because you are restless. Nature refuses to be rushed, and yet it never fails. Your life is no different. It obeys cosmic law, and one of those laws is silence. The gap, the pause, the unseen labor that precedes the visible gift. So when silence arrives, stop fighting it. Stop calling it empty. Stop labeling it as loss. It is not loss. It is latency. It is not emptiness. It is fullness not yet translated into form. When you truly grasp this, something changes in you. You stop filling every quiet moment with noise. You stop forcing answers before their time. You stop fearing the pause. Instead, you meet it as an ally. This is mastery. To walk into silence not as a victim, but as a partner. To rest in stillness not as a void, but as a field. To perceive emptiness not as absence, but as presence in disguise. Then the very thing you feared becomes the thing you crave. Silence stops being threatening. It becomes nourishing. Stillness stops being empty. It becomes overflowing. And you begin to notice. The deepest insights you've ever had did not come from noise. They came from quiet. The most profound clarity did not come from movement. It came from stillness. The most powerful transformations in your life did not come from filling space, but from allowing space. Nothing is really empty. Everything is alive. Everything is working. And silence is simply the veil over fullness until your perception catches up. Silence is not a lack. It is a law. A law that insists on space before form. A law that ensures balance before expansion. A law that protects you from what you are not yet ready to carry. You often imagine the universe as endlessly giving, always pouring blessings, always answering prayers, always filling space with form. But the deeper truth is, the universe is also endlessly holding. Holding back. Holding still. Holding silence around you like a cocoon, because rushing would destroy the pattern. This is why you cannot measure fullness by what is seen. To the impatient eye, emptiness looks like abandonment. But to the wise, emptiness is simply calibration. The silence is not against you, it is for you. It is protecting the seed before it sprouts. It is strengthening the root before the stem breaks the surface. It is expanding the vessel before pouring in the water. You have been taught to fear the gap. But the gap is where the sacred work is done. Not in the noise of constant doing. Not in the chaos of endless motion. But in the still interval where energy reorganizes into form. The truth is, silence is never inactive. It is the most active state of all. Stillness is not idleness. It is intelligence in rest. It is the field rebalancing itself. It is your soul syncing with what your eyes cannot yet see. Think of breath. The inhale is visible, the exhale is audible. But between them is a pause. That pause is the most powerful part of the cycle. It is the pivot, the hinge, the fulcrum where energy changes direction. Without the pause, the breath collapses. Without the silence, the sound loses meaning. Life is built on this rhythm. Presence and absence. Form and formlessness. Noise and silence. Both matter. Both are necessary. And what you name emptiness is simply one side of the cycle. When you resist silence, you resist half of reality. When you deny stillness, you deny your own becoming. When you label the void as wasted, you sabotage its gift. So shift the label. Shift the language. Shift the lens. Instead of saying, nothing is happening, say, something beyond my perception is unfolding. Instead of saying, this silence is unbearable, say, this silence is fertilizing me. Instead of saying, this emptiness is proof of lack, say, this emptiness is preparation for abundance. Language matters because it directs your state. And your state communicates with the field. Every thought you think, every word you whisper, every meaning you attach, is a broadcast. The silence listens. The silence absorbs. The silence responds. This is why masters of every tradition emphasize trust. Trust is the highest vibration you can carry into the void. Not because trust manipulates outcomes, but because trust harmonizes you with the unseen intelligence already at work. When you trust, you relax. When you relax, you align. When you align, you become magnetic. And when you become magnetic, form finds you without effort. So the teaching is not, fill the emptiness. The teaching is, enter it with trust. There is no empty room. There is no empty sky. There is no empty life. Only fullness you cannot yet measure. The silence is the most alive space you will ever touch. The stillness is the most dynamic presence you will ever know. And the void is the most powerful teacher you will ever meet. It asks you to stop clinging. It asks you to stop grasping. It asks you to surrender your illusion of control. And in return, it offers you something greater, alignment with the hidden order of the cosmos. Understand this clearly. The universe is not testing you with silence to frustrate you. It is refining you through silence to strengthen you. It is not punishing you with pauses. It is preparing you with pauses. It is not mocking you with emptiness. It is gifting you with fullness in disguise. When you truly grasp this, the fear of the void dissolves. You no longer run from it. You no longer try to fill it prematurely. You no longer label it as failure. Instead, you welcome it. You breathe with it. You rest in it. And you allow it to do its work. This is the silent power of the universe. It moves most strongly where your eyes see nothing. It speaks most clearly where your ears hear nothing. It creates most profoundly where your mind believes nothing exists. And so the invitation is simple. Do not fear the empty. Do not fight the silence. Do not flee the stillness. Meet them. Enter them. Trust them. Because nothing is really empty. Everything is alive. Everything is moving. Everything is forming. And when you finally stop resisting the silence, you discover the truth that has been waiting there all along. The silence is not the absence of life. It is the language of life itself.